Wow, but this is his first time up here on the platform with his ukulele to share his talent with us. Good. All right, when you're ready.
Sometimes seems impossible, and voices fade and tell you it's improbable. Hold on to what you love. Hold on to what you dream of, and you'll be unstoppable. Anything is possible when you believe. Possible. Do you believe anything is possible? What's a dream? Sometimes seems illogical. When you try and fall, your dream can feel intangible. Chin up. Try again, stand up and carry on, and your dream will become visible. Anything is possible when you believe. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Because anything is possible when you believe. Anything is possible. Do you believe? Anything is possible.
Thank you, Gabriel. I believe it's possible to get a 14-year-old out of bed for a 9:30 service.
Gabriel has a beautiful voice, and he dances. Got good genes. There were two women walking through the woods, and they heard this frog, and the frog screamed, "Help me, help me! I'm a stockbroker!" Who threw an evil curse from a witch, was transformed into a frog, and if you will kiss me, I will be restored. And one of the women quickly grabbed him up and stuffed him in her purse, and the other lady said, "Did you hear what he said? If you kiss him, he'll be turned back into a stockbroker." And the woman said, "A talking frog is more valuable." Scripture from 1 Thessalonians. Therefore, encourage one another and build up each other, as indeed you are doing. So that's our task. Our mission is to build each other up. And so this morning we went back to 2 services, and that gave me more choices about what I was going to speak about. And I wasn't so excited about what I was speaking about at 11. So I got to do something entirely different at 9:30. So you get to hear one thing at 9:30. If you stay, you get to hear something else at 11. The unity movement started with 2, I believe, very ordinary people, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. They wanted to share in a positive way what they were learning about God and what God was doing in their lives. They wanted to pray for and with all the people that they loved. They wanted everybody to know, each person to know that they were a beloved child of God. They wanted you to know that you're a beloved child of God. They wanted me to know that I'm a beloved child of God. So Charles and Myrtle Fillmore made a positive difference in this world. And they're making a difference in our lives because we're here today because of that. And so this morning I want to consider how you and I make a difference in other people's lives. Because that's what we're here to do, make a difference. There was a letter in Psychology Today by Dr. Robert Healy, and he was writing about one of his patients who came in. And the patient came in for treatment because he had been so down, so depressed, that he had contemplated suicide. And when Dr. Healy asked him, what stopped you? Why didn't you proceed? He went on to tell Dr. Healy that he was driving to this bridge where he was going to jump off. That was his plan. And so he just got to a stoplight. He looked over, and there was just a lady sitting on a bench waiting for the bus, and she smiled. She really saw him, and she smiled at him. She acknowledged him. And as he smiled back, and as he drove off, he realized, I'm smiling. You know, I have something to live for. And the question that crossed my mind is if he had pulled up in a car next to me, or if I'd been sitting on a bench, would I have smiled? Would this young man be alive if he passed me? Perhaps that young man has a family now. You know, one of his children or his grandchildren or his great-grandchildren might be the next Albert Schweitzer or Martin Luther King or Mother Teresa, all because that woman smiled. And so what I want us to think about is that you and I are interconnected. We're all one. We teach that all the time, that we are all one. And that there is always this potential for us to touch each other's lives and to make a difference. So how we choose to be is always important. Choosing to be a beloved child of God. And I know that life gives us choices to be other than that. You know, when the copier doesn't work, when the computer loses your document. I know it's me, but I blame it on the computer. And I don't know how, some of you remember when I first started here, pretty soon after I started here, my 3 grandchildren came to live with me. Pretty quickly, I got the opportunity to learn I could be a wicked witch or a beloved grandmother. But, you know, it was a choice. And we're always getting to make that choice. And so during the Cold War, do any of y'all remember the Cold War? One of the things that the Soviets came up with is this substance called NPPD, and it was a substance that they strategically placed on American doorknobs, like the consulate doorknobs and things. And what they thought was that then they could track and see if they had any people in their government who were double agents. And what happened is that the NPPD transferred, and when you shook hands with somebody, it transferred, and it didn't wash off, and it transferred, and even though it was naked to the visible eye and visible under ultraviolet light, what they found is after 2 weeks, everybody in town had it on them. So they couldn't tell. They couldn't tell. They didn't know how people got that. So their plan did not work because we're all so interconnected. There's a law of 250, and it says that the average person in a week makes contact with 250 other people. And most of that contact is fairly casual, and sometimes it's more intense. And every one of those contacts is filled with the potential of making somebody else's life better, filled with the potential of us having a positive impact. So Chris Chenoweth, Reverend Chris Chenoweth, that many of you know, he's spoken here, he told that story to his congregation in Rockford, Illinois, and he had one of his congregants was a mathematics professor, Jerry Caton, and Dr. Caton said, that can't be true. And so Chris challenged him to check it out, and he used one of those clickers, the little market clickers, and he said, just this week, click at all of the people that you have an interaction with. Now that doesn't mean if a student walks in and sits in a chair, it means people that you have an interaction with. And at the end of the week, he had 518 interactions. In another Psychology Today article, Stanley Milgram wrote that in a study, and it's called The Small World, he did a study, and I think probably most of you have heard about this, about how to see how many degrees of separation there is between us. And so he wanted to see what it would take to get a letter from a randomly selected person in Nebraska to a randomly selected person in Boston. Picked a person, gave them a letter with somebody's name and address in Boston, and said, can you get this to them? Get someone to hand it to them. In other words, not mail it. Get it handed off. And what he found is that it's not only possible, but it's probable every time. And that it only takes 5 or 6 people. And that's in that 6 degrees of separation with, who's the? Kevin Bacon, yeah. So they say it only takes 5.5 times to get a random letter from one place to another. And so the bottom line of what that means in our lives is that you and I, each one of us, have at least 50 contacts with people every week. Probably more like 250. But if each one of us had a positive impact on 50 people, well, if 10 of you had a positive impact on 50 people, that'd be 500 people. And if those 500 people went on to have a contact with, and you know where this goes, that would touch 25,000 lives. And if they went on, it would be 1,250,000. And at level 3, it's 62.5 million. You know, when you drop the stone in the water and it has this ripple effect, what you and I do has a ripple effect. What you and I do matters. There's a woman in California who believes that every single person on the planet has value, and everybody on the planet has the capability of making a difference. Her name is Holise Bridges. I think it's interesting that her name is Bridges, because that bridging of people together. She has an organization, Who I Am Makes a Difference. And if you go on YouTube and you put Holise Bridges in, you will find a video of her doing this ceremony. It's called a blue ribbon ceremony, and it's where you go to someone that has made a difference in your life, and you give them a blue ribbon, and then you ask them to give the blue ribbon to someone that makes a difference in their life. And this has been on 2020 and on lots of radio and television shows, and schools and churches and universities have used this all around the world. There was a teacher in New York City who decided to honor each of her high school seniors for the difference they made in her life. And so she thought about each one and the individual difference that they made. And so she did this blue ribbon ceremony, and she gave them a blue ribbon and told them that this is why they made a difference in her life. And then she gave them extra blue ribbons and asked them to do the same thing. And so one of the students honored a junior executive in a nearby company because he had been helpful with him in career planning. And the man was so touched, and he sat there and he thought about, who should I honor? And he thought about that his boss had really mentored him, and he went in and asked his boss, can I put this blue ribbon on you? And here's why. You have mentored me, and I have grown so much while I have worked with you. And then he gave him another as his last ribbon and said, and would you pass it on? And that night, when the man got home, he went to his 14-year-old son and he said, the most incredible thing happened to me. A junior executive where I work came into my office today, and he told me that he admired me, and he gave me this blue ribbon, and he gave me another one and asked me to give it to the person who makes a difference in my life, to find somebody else to honor. And he said, so all afternoon I've thought about who did I want to honor. And as I drove home, I knew that who I wanted to honor is you, because you are the most important person in my life. You are a great kid, and I love you. I know that sometimes I scream at you about your grades not being good enough, or for your bedroom being a mess. But you make a difference to me. I love you. And the startled boy started to cry, and he couldn't stop crying. His whole body shook. And as he looked up at his dad, he said, I was planning to commit suicide tomorrow because I didn't think anyone loved me. Now I don't need to. So I have some ribbons that I'm going to pass out. And I'm going to invite you to make a difference in someone's life, to tell someone how much they matter, to be that carrier of love. The everlasting truth is what we do makes a difference. And if you doubt that, think about somebody in your life who's made a difference for you. And know that as a beloved child of God, you get to make that choice every day about how you are going to be a positive influence or not.